We're looking, of course, at the Parasha, the Parasha of Devarim, and I'd like to start with the account or a component of the account of the search for judges for the lower courts and the higher courts as well, that Moshe was encouraged to seek. In other words, the people appealed to him. It was the advice of Yisro, his father-in-law, and he set about looking for. So let's begin with the first chapter, Pasuk Yud Gimel. If you've got the Art Scroll Stone Chumash, it's on page 942. It's the beginning of Devarim, chapter 1, verse 13. Havu lachem anashim chachamim unevonim v'yiduim l'shivtechem v'asimem beroshechem. Provide for yourselves anashim, men, who are chachamim, who are wise. Now, anashim probably means men of distinction, because presuming that we're talking about men, we need to even say anashim. The fact that it does implies these are people of prominence, maybe people of stature. Anashim chachamim, who are wise, univonim, who have insight, v'yiduim l'shivtechem, who are well known to your tribes. Now that's how the Art School people render it, and that follows Rashi, who says people who you know. That is to say, I, Moshe, I don't know well every member of Klal Yisrael. A person comes to me looking distinguished. He's got a beard and he's wrapped in his talis, and he says, yeah, I'm signing up for the job of being a Dayan. So Moshe says to the people, you know whether this candidate is qualified or not qualified. You've grown up with him. You are his friends, his relatives, his neighbors. So that's V'yiduim l'shivtechem v'asimem beroshechem. I will place them at your head. And again, the Torah goes on to describe whether they liked the idea or they didn't like the idea. Possibly they were too enthusiastic about the idea for Moshe's own liking. But what I want to explore tonight is a very, I think, beautiful interpretation of ha-Kabbalah about the expression V'yiduim l'shivtechem. So he says the word l'shivtechem does not refer to v'yiduim only, but rather the way to read it is as follows. Anashim, men, chachamim unevonim v'yiduim. L'shivtechem, that is to say that your tribes, you shall propose or advance for whether Moshe made the selection or it was through some other method, from your shvatim, each tribe among its own numbers, but they should be chachamim unevonim v'yiduim. Meaning chachamim is those who have wisdom, like chachma, unevonim is bina, v'yiduim is da'as. So they should be people who are knowledgeable. So ha-Kabbalah says that it means that we are seeking, he quotes the Vilna Gaon in this regard, that we are seeking ba'alei deya. So the word v'yiduim goes together with chachamim unevonim v'yiduim. Of course, v'yiduim is really, the real meaning is known, not that they possess knowledge, not ba'alei deya, even though according to this interpretation, that is really the intent. Says the ha-Kabbalah, excuse me, that if you take a look at the ta'amim, at the cantillation notes, I don't know whether you're accustomed to doing that, but if you take note of the notes, you will see that anashim, chachamim, unevonim, chachamim, unevonim, v'yiduim go together. Unevonim, v'yiduim, those three terms are arranged in such a way that they are three adjectives or three qualities that describe the qualified applicants for these leadership roles, for these roles of judges and dayanim. Chachamim unevonim v'yiduim, and the l'shivtechem therefore reflects on each of those previous designations. The question, of course, which all of this begs is, why does it say v'yiduim? So Ksav Kabbalah says, it's as if it said v'yodim, those who are knowledgeable, those who know. Like it says in Koheles, v'lo liyodim chein. That grace or charm is not necessarily possessed by those who have knowledge. So v'yiduim is like another version of the word yodim. But again, why is it written that way? So Ramban says that these people should be known for their midot. People who are distinguished and who are known for their character. And Ramban says, that everyone said about this person, he is worthy, he is not just qualified, but by general acclaim. His character is of a sterling character, and his wisdom, his knowledge, his insight give the confidence to his Bnei Shevet, to the other members of his tribe, that he is a worthy candidate. Says Ksav Kabbalah, and really this is his chidush, that it says v'yiduim l'shivteichem. He says that this is an allusion to what the Rambam writes, because the Rambam in the laws of the Sanhedrin, when he describes the candidate, the qualities that the candidate should have, v'yiduim l'shivteichem elu sheruach habrios nochemehem. These are people who are find favor in the eyes of their peers, of their contemporaries. And in what way will they be beloved by people? If they have a generous eye, if they are of modest disposition, people enjoy their company, and their conversation and their interaction, even their business transactions with people, are done in a peaceful and in a congenial manner. Ksav Kabbalah says this is the meaning of v'yiduim. V'yiduim doesn't just mean that they are known, like they have a reputation, but he says it's like the pasuk that says, Ki yada'ativ lemana shayit saveh. Ki yada'ativ lemana shayit saveh, which means because I have known him, that he will instruct his household and his descendants after him. This is what Hashem said about Avraham Avinu. Avraham, will I withhold from Avraham my intention regarding the people of Sodom? Ki yada'ativ leman yitzaveh, because I know him. It's an expression, says Ksav Kabbalah, lashon inyano ahava v'chiba. It's an expression of affection, of love. Hashem says about Aaron, Ki yada'ativ, I know him. Not just Hashem has the knowledge of that person, but the fact that Hashem describes or even reflects on his special relationship with Avram in that word Ki yada'ativ. That is the meaning here. V'yiduim l'shivteichem. They are known, they are beloved by their Bnei Shevet, by the other members of their tribe. And the editor, who's done quite a nice job of this edition, published by Mosad Rav Kook about 6-7 years ago. So he quotes the Gemara in the Yerushalmi and Sanhedrin, also the Bavli, regarding the qualities that these shoftim, these judges should have. And he also quotes, the editor quotes the Torah Temimah, and the Torah Temimah says, Anashim Yiduim, they are people who are known. It means they are known in their humanitarian ways. Sheba Anushiyutam, Anashim Yiduim, they are people who are known. They are known for their humanitarian qualities. They have midot tovot between man and his fellow man. I'm sure many of the people on this shiur have had the opportunity to know, maybe personally or by reputation, Dayan Erentor, Zuzan Gesund, Shalav Refuah Shlema. Just want to mention that Dayan Erentor, I worked with him for many years closely on the Beis Din, and I saw these qualities in Dayan Erentor. I had a lot of interaction with conversion candidates. And on one occasion, there was a woman who was a candidate for conversion, and her partner or husband, they were mature people, and she wanted to convert. And her husband was a Jewish man, came actually from quite a traditional family. He was very successful financially, and I remember he said to me, they had a meeting with Diane Ehrentreu. They were not happy with the way it went, and he said to me, Diane Ehrentreu is such a gentleman. He's so charming. Even though what Diane Ehrentreu said to them at this meeting was not at all to their liking, but his nature, his character was of such a quality that they could not fail to be impressed. Don't need to tell you how that ended, but anyway, that was his comment about Diane Ehrentreu. I'll tell you something else, which people don't know this, but I witnessed it many years ago, 25 years ago. I sat in on an interview that Diane Ehrentreu conducted with a family, also conversion candidates. I don't remember the details of it. It was a long time ago, and they were a family who were living in Essex, not an affluent area, and they were not affluent people, and they were finding it difficult to pay for the lessons. And I was there. Diane Ehrentreu took out, at that time, the tutors were charging £20 an hour. He took out, I think it was 60 or 80 pounds from his wallet, and he said, here is enough for the next few lessons. He wanted to give them the encouragement, say, you're doing well, you need to learn more. And they said, yeah, but we can't afford it. He took the money out of his wallet. Now, whether he was reimbursed from charitable funds, I don't know, but that's what I saw him do. Nobody else knows that little illustration, by the way. I was so impressed with his role wasn't to sponsor them. His role was to interview them, to assess them, to maybe encourage them. But this is the quality. These are the features that, according to ve-ha-Kabbalah, the Torah means when it says "Viduim l'shivteichem." Anashim yiduim, people who are renowned for their humanitarianism. These are the qualities to seek for a dayan. I'd like to go on to the next pasuk that we will consider, and that is just a few verses more. Pasuk Yud Zayin. We'll find it here on the same page. Again, part of the brief for the dayanim, for the judges, for the shoftim. Lo sakiru panim b'mishpat, kakaton kagadol tishma'un. Do not show favoritism in judgment. Small and great alike shall you hear. Lo saguru mipnei ish, don't tremble before any man, etc. The judge has to be resolute, and he has to be not subject or not inclined to show favoritism to someone whom he knows, or maybe he has some prior interaction with that person. Obviously, if he has a close relationship, then he's in any case not qualified in halachic terms. But maybe he is, that is to say, he doesn't know that person well, but that person maybe charms him or makes a favorable impression upon him, or maybe he knows him passingly. So he might be inclined to show him some favoritism. So the Torah says, "Lo sakiru panim." Now that's how Rashi explains it, in accordance with one opinion in the Talmud. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Do not recognize lahakir, hakara. But Rabbi Eliezer says, do not distance one side. Do not display antagonism or hostility or neglect, or you're not as interested in the point of view or in the arguments advanced by one of the sides. Don't do that either. Lo sakiru, he understands the word, he interprets, Rabbi Eliezer in the Gemara in Sanhedrin interprets the word lo sakiru to mean lo senacharu, do not regard him as nechar. The word nechar means like a stranger, like the word anachri, nechar haaretz. ve-ha-Kabbalah makes a very clever observation, which I think is the pshat, meaning the reason these two sages in the Talmud are disagreeing in sort of opposite ways. Of course, the outcome is the same. The Torah says, do not favor someone, or do not disfavor someone, comes to the same thing. Of course, the point is exactly the same. But what does the word actually mean? Says ha-Kabbalah, the word nechar, nun chaf resh, means it's related to hakara, to know and to recognize, or to have a prior relationship with, lahakir, but it also has the opposite meaning, zarus berichuk, someone who is a stranger and who you're distancing. Like the pasuk says, pen yinakru saremo. I will regard God as a nachri, as someone who is a stranger. The point is that this is an example, of which there are quite a few in Hebrew, of a word that has a meaning and also the opposite meaning. You have like the word ikar. Ikar means root or foundation. La'akar is to uproot. The same is true for the word shoresh. Shoresh also means root, but lisharesh is to uproot. You have in Hebrew quite a few words that are like that. I can think of one word in English, incidentally, if I digress for a moment. I know of one word that I can think of in English that has that quality. It has a meaning and the opposite meaning as well. It means two opposite things. Of course, there are many words in English and in Hebrew that mean different things, but in Hebrew, we find that a word has two meanings or more than two, but if we find two that are opposite to one another. In English, the word cleave, like a jeweler will cleave a gemstone. It means to break it apart. To cleave is to separate, but to cleave to God or to cleave to one another is to cling and to be joined closely with one another. Okay, that's just by the by. So it says ha-Kabbalah, that is this is true for the word nun chaf resh, nechar as well. Lahakir is to recognize, nechar is to shun or to regard as distant or alienated, perhaps. So that's why the two sages in the Talmud have two different views as to what the Torah is saying. Of course, they don't really dispute with one another. It's just a difference of how we interpret the word. Is the Torah saying the greater pitfall is for a judge to favor someone he likes, which he may not do? Or is the greater pitfall to ignore or to shun or to give the cold shoulder or to give less attention or encouragement to someone whom he either doesn't like or whom he regards as undeserving? And no doubt there are people who come to a judge or a dayan who are undeserving, but maybe they're undeserving for a lot of different reasons. But this case must be evaluated, of course, exclusively on its own merits. Okay, I think that's clear enough. Let me share with you a final, also linguistic or lexicographical comment, which has an echo in what we've seen previously as well. Look a bit further, only a few verses further, to Pasuk Chaf Beis. So in verse 22, page 944, if you're with me in the Art Scroll stone. Here the Torah says, "Vatikravun elai kulchem." You all gathered around me. Now here, Moshe, in just a few verses, is recounting the calamitous incident of the spies, the dispatch of the spies. Vatikravun elai kulchem. You all gathered to me, and this, of course, is the companion piece. It actually, although it's briefer, but it sheds light nevertheless on the original account in Parasha Shlach Lecha. You all gathered around me. You all clamored for not just for my attention, but you had something to insist, to foist upon me. Vatomru, and you said, Nishlach anashim lefanenu. We want to send people ahead of us. We don't want to just go into the land in accordance with the divine command and assurance. We're not comfortable with that. We want to send a reconnaissance mission. We want to send people in advance. V'yachparu lanu es haaretz, and let them, the word v'yachparu, just want to see how the Art Scroll people render it. The Art Scroll people let them spy out the land. Now the word v'yachparu, lachpar, means to dig. It's a parak in Bava Kama, I think, lo yachpar. definitely Bava Kama. Definitely in Ezekiel, one of the Bavas. You have the word, the modern Hebrew word chafira. Chafira is an excavation, whether an archaeological excavation or just to excavate to build the foundations of it. It's called chafira. Vayachperu lanu literally means to search out, to spy out. It literally means to dig. Vayachperu lanu es haaretz. They shall spy out the land for us. Now, of course, as I just mentioned, this is a recapitulation of the sin of the spies. But of course, we remember the spies by the word meraglim, but the Torah itself doesn't use the word meraglim there. The Torah just says, Vayaturu es eretz Canaan. They shall explore. It really means they should go as tourists. Latur means to explore, like a tayar, like in modern Hebrew tayar, which is very similar to the English word tour, tourist. We mentioned at the time in Parasha Shlach Lecha, the ha-Kabbalah makes a similar comment, and here he observes something along very similar lines, that the first time around, they were sent with the mission of being tourists, which means to look for what is good about the land. They explored the land, and their brief was to report back on what they found. But the nature of a tayar is that he wants to explore the land, what's beautiful about the land or the town, wherever he may go. The word vayachperu means to dig, like you dig up dirt, you dig around to see what you can find that maybe someone else is trying to conceal. So he says that the word chafira is related to the word, he says, a pasuk, the Gemara in Sota says that lo hiskavnu ela levoshta shel Eretz Yisrael. Look again closely at that word yachperu. Their intention, the Jewish people who sent them, their intention was to expose the shame of the land of Israel. They were not seeking to learn about how appealing it is and how it flows with milk and honey. They were looking for a reason to sabotage the entry into the land. And of course, that's exactly what happened. But the Gemara says, that quotes a pasuk, Hine vayachperu. I'm sorry, it says here, vayachperu, and it says elsewhere in the book of Yeshaya, if you want to look it up, it's chapter 24, I think, verse 23. The pasuk in Yeshaya, I just want to be sure I'm quoting correctly, chapter 24, verse 23. There it says, V'chafra halevana, the moon was shamed. V'chafra halevana, the moon was humiliated. Says the ha-Kabbalah, the word chafira, che, pei, resh, is the same as the word cherpa. Cherpa means shame, disgrace, or humiliation, insult. That's cherpa. Cherpa is chaf, resh, it's ches. Ches, resh, pei, cherpa. This word is chafar, ches, pei, resh. It's the same letters, bechiluf osios. Again, in Hebrew, we find often that a word with a three-letter root, the letters, if they are repositioned, especially the second and third letters, they have a similar meaning. It's not identical, but it is similar. So the word vayachperu, to dig, is related to cherpa, which is to humiliate or to disgrace or to shame. So the Torah calls them tayarim, and they were sent latur. But here, when Moshe rebukes them, and Moshe is with the unhappy benefit of hindsight, he is saying, actually, you wanted the achperu lanu, you wanted them to dig up all the dirt about the land of Israel, and of course, that's exactly what happened. So the first time around, it's like on the surface, they said, yeah, vayatur, let them be tourists and bring back a report. But now when Moshe is rebuking them, he's speaking more candidly and he's speaking more, let's say, to the point. And he says, "Vayachparu lanu." If you excuse the pun, he called a spade a spade. Lachpor is to dig. So Moshe Rabbeinu was calling a spade a spade. In the minutes we have left, I would just like to reflect on the time of year. We are within 2 or 3 days of Tisha B'Av. I'm sure you know that the sin of the spies, which is mentioned briefly in our Parasha, took place, meaning they returned from their exploration and from their mission on the 8th of Av. They gave their report that same day, and the people cried at night. The Torah says that the people cried that night, having imbibed and accepted, perhaps even wanting to believe the worst, the report of the spies, and they cried that night. The Talmud says, very well known, that Hashem said, "You've cried for no reason, you will have a reason to cry in the future on this night." It doesn't mean God is being vindictive, but he's saying that when the turn of events are such that tragedy befalls the Jewish people, it will happen on the same night that we, the Jewish people, have designated as a night for tragedy, a night for exile. And this is the Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies, which according to this analysis, it emerges from the fact that they went with the wrong agenda. Instead of looking for the good, they looked for the bad. And they found it, or at least what they saw enabled them to conclude that the land is a good land, that the people are too powerful and they're dying all the time as well, and all the different features of what they saw and what they reported. My point here is that the part of the antidote to the galus is to reverse and to embrace the opposite quality, the opposite habit that brought it about, which is the searching for the bad. We need to do more to see the good and to search for the good. And I would just add as well that even according to the famous account in the Gemara in Gittin about the Churban, the destruction of the Second Temple, the hands of the Romans, the Talmud says it came about through the rivalry, the strife, the antagonism between Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Actually, it wasn't between the two of them, but it was of the error of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, that a certain person made a party and he told his valet to invite Kamsa to the party, and instead he invited Bar Kamsa. And Bar Kamsa was his enemy, and he came to the party surprised and maybe pleased to have been invited. And the host rushed over to him and said, "Who asked you to come? Who let you through the door? Get out of here." And the Kitzur, again, I'm sure you know that he humiliated him. The rabbis were there as well, and it all reflected very unfavorably on the Jewish people. And one thing led to another, and it became the proximate cause, the straw that broke the camel's back, that brought about the Churban, the destruction of the temple. I would like to suggest that this impulse to judge unfavorably, when he saw his enemy in the banquet, he could have just looked the other way, could have said, "Well, there must be a mistake. I'm going to rebuke my valet," subsequently forget, not reading the memo properly, going to the wrong person. But he didn't do that. Instead of judging favorably, instead of sort of looking at the benign interpretation of why his enemy is there, and maybe even realize perhaps it's all for the good, and this is a way to begin the restoration of our relationship. He looked for the bad and he assumed the worst, and he gave it a malevolent interpretation, and it brought about ultimately the terrible churban. This is what the Talmud says, sinas chinam. It's a manifestation of closeness, hatred. So I don't think we've had to struggle too much to relate our little shir tonight to the season as well. And as we like to do, let's just sum it up. And I would like to actually take the opportunity in retrospect, to dedicate this short shiur tonight to the recovery of Dayan Ehrentreu. I did tell a couple of stories about him. To be honest, if he was well, perhaps I would have been more circumspect. Hope he does recover very soon. Perhaps Rebbetzin Ruchi Ehrentreu will hear this year and enjoy it as well. So it should be a refuah shlema for Dayan Ehrentreu. But we learned about V'yidu'im l'shiftechem, renowned for their humanitarianism. Renowned humanitarians, these judges, they need the quality that they have knowledge, etc., but they should also be known. They should be known for their fine qualities, so people say this is someone worthy of being a dayan. We also learned about los sakiru panim, do not recognize a face, meaning do not show favoritism, but it could also mean the opposite. Do not distance or alienate someone whom you don't like, whom you feel is a scoundrel, doesn't deserve to get a fair hearing. That is wrong. Everyone deserves a fair hearing in accordance with the case, the merits or otherwise of the case that comes before every judge. And then we said v'yachperu, to dig out, because here Moshe calls a spade, and he says that really your intention was to find bad news, and yes, you were able to find it and to interpret it in that way, and it all led to the catastrophe, which is the Chet HaMeraglim, ultimately setting the stage for Tisha B'Av, which we continue to mourn and to observe in a baleful way, even to this day. May it soon be transformed into a day of joy and rejoicing for all of us. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful summer. B'ezrat Hashem. We'll see you back in September.